On behalf of the Allingham Committee, I am delighted to welcome everyone here this evening to the Nets of Wonder, to our very own writer, Olive Travers, her son, Eamon Travers, and artist, Barry Britton, all very talented people in their own right. There will be photos used as a backdrop to the stories this evening. There will be guest readers and guest singers. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this evening, and I will now hand you over to our MC for this evening, Mr. Richard Hurst. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rosie. Good evening, all. Thank you, Anthony. It's wonderful to see so many people come out this evening. Thank you for your support. At Allingham 2021, Donegal creatives from different artistic backgrounds, writer Olive Travers, artist Barry Britton, and musician-composer Eamon Travers gave us Stories on the Wall. Since that highly enjoyable and memorable evening, the trio, helped and encouraged by family and friends, have continued their unique collaboration. Barry was calling it something else out there, but it was a unique collaboration to finally haul ashore Nets of Wonder. It is a bounty for the senses. And to quote Mairead na Bhaoine, this is truly a labour of love. This collaboration incorporates several of Olive's warm and witty Sunday miscellany scripts, Barry's truly imaginative drawings, and Eamon's original musical compositions, which can be downloaded to your chosen music app, as Barry said, using the QR code within the book itself. Are you still with me? It's very simple, even I could do it. Over the course of the next hour or so, you are invited to sit back and enjoy several readings from Nets of Wonder, which Olive and some guest readers will read aloud for us tonight. Whilst the writings are being read, the particular unique illustration Barry has created to complement the writing will be displayed on the cyc wall behind me, as Rosie mentioned. And following each reading, Eamon will perform the composition he wrote to enhance the written word of that particular piece. So, without further ado, let's allow ourselves to be entangled in these nets of wonder with our first piece of the evening. Olive will read The Gifted Life, which will be followed by Eamon's themed music. But we need them on the stage. Put your hands together, please, for Olive Travers and Eamon Travers.
My father had frequently to be rescued from drowning in the weeks before he died. As the cancer ravished him, a great remembered terror shuddered through his body and his mind. It gave his wasted body unnatural strength. He climbed onto chairs, once toppled a wardrobe, and left bruises on our arms as we became the straws he clutched. He was a child again, and the waters of Lough Erne were closing over him. He knew that he was no cat. For him, there would be just this one life, just the one reprieve from death over 70 years earlier. I knew the story of that reprieve so well from his frequent whiskey-loosened retelling of it. He told the story with his whole body, his arms rising and falling like the water, and in the end he would give this bemused shake of his head as though still bewildered by the good fortune of the life he had been gifted. As death approached, it was this ancient drama which surfaced through the richly packed sedimented layers of his life. As a young boy growing up on the shores of Lough Erne, he was delighted when two older boys invited him to go out fishing with them. It was his first time in a boat. That magical shift of seeing his familiar world from a different angle. the splash as the oars sliced through the smooth water of the loch, the splish-splash as the boat sculled away from his father's familiar fertile green fields, which gave way to the yellow wild iris and marsh marigolds fringing the water. Then, maybe because the fish weren't biting, maybe because the harshness of their lives had made stones of their hearts, or maybe it was only, as my father reckoned, for a bit of sport. For whatever reason, the boys threw my father out of the boat. Down, down, down he sank like a stone into that unknown world of murky greenness under the water's smooth surface, his lungs bursting with the effort of holding his breath, the water gurgling in when he could no longer do so, and with it his desire to surrender to its insistence. As Emily Dickinson writes, drowning is not so pitiful as they attempt to rise. 3 times 'tis said a drowning man comes up to face the sky. And he came up once, twice, desperately trying to cling on to the tangle of underwater reeds that gave way under his grasp. It was only when he surfaced for the 3rd time that the boys managed to haul him back onto the boat. He lay there like a dying fish, water streaming from his mouth and nose. The boys carried him half dead to his home, where they told his mother he had fallen out of the boat and they had rescued him. In those days, where silence was a child's best protection, he never told his parents the truth, but he told us that the men those boys became could never look him in the eye. He spent all of his life on the shores of that same loch, but he never again left dry land. And he instilled in us, his children, his awareness of that union of what is beautiful with what is terrible. Death, deferred that day on the loch, had to skulk around for over 70 years before it was able to claim him. The difference was that in that time he had accumulated the love not only of his 7 children, but of 7 sons and daughters-in-law and a whole flock of grandchildren. This love formed the bulwark against the rising water coming to claim him. We spread the pages of the Fermanagh Herald on the floor to make safe stepping stones to the Noah's Ark refuge of his bed. We stayed beside him day and night, and death, when he had last surrendered to him, was gentle and peaceful. His face, purged of all fear, relaxed, and he had that look of someone who had travelled a long journey but had now arrived safely. When he drew his last breath, the mirror was covered and the window of his bedroom opened wide, so that his soul could rise unimpeded to a high ground heaven. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Olive and Eamon. I can tell you I was lucky enough to get a copy of Nets of Wonder a few days ago, and it is marvellous to actually sit down with your phone on the playlist and listen to the pieces as you read the words and look at those fantastic illustrations as well. Something very different to do, so I recommend it. And now on to our second piece, Back to the Fuchsia. Our next reader, Joan Harvey, will read an extract from this piece in honour of her father, someone that many of us knew and loved, the poet Francis Harvey. One of Frank's haikus from his book of Donegal haikus is included in the written piece. Again, this will be followed by another themed piece from Eamon. So please put your hands together, please, for Joan Harvey. Thank you.
Fuchsia thrives on our wind-scarred rocky coast, flaunting its beauty against the backdrop of the constant flux of sea light. It is a beauty as variable as our weather. Rain sweeping in veils over it makes the hedges throb and pulse with its blood red and purple flowers, leading to its name, in Irish, Jora J, the tears of God. When the sun and sea breezes caress it, its bell-shaped flowers are long-legged ballerinas pirouetting in their purple and crimson tutu. Long before we were repackaged as the wild Atlantic way, its colours would have echoed the traditional red and mauve petticoats worn by western seaboard women. Now, like some trendy avant-garde gardener, it thumbs its nose at conventional colour combinations and chooses as its roadside companion the blazing orange spires of Montbretia. We take omnipresence of fuchsia so for granted, it is hard to believe that it is not a native. In fact, its bright colours were designed by nature to attract the hummingbirds in its home near the Magellan Straits in Chile. Its origins are in its botanical name, Fuchsia magellanica. As children, we called it honeysuckle, as like the hummingbird, we perfected the art of sucking out the sweet pouch of nectar from its flower base. This involved removing petals and squeezing the pouch straight into our mouths, a pleasure that left us with ghoulish red and purple stained lips. Its bell flowers are also called ladies' eardrops, a fact which Donegal poet Francis Harvey pithily turned into a haiku. She wants red earrings, per me. I present her with 2 fuchsia blooms. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, well done.
Back to the fuchsias. Thank you very much, Joan and Eamon. And now she was part of the whole production a couple of years ago, so we couldn't go ahead without having her back this evening. The musical and vocal collaboration between these two is something else to enjoy. So, back by popular demand, Miss Fionnuala McCusker is going to sing for us. It's a piece that she has learned called Now at Last by a singer-songwriter, Bob Hames. Ladies and gentlemen, Fionnuala McCusker. Thank you.
Now at last I know what a fool I've been, for I've lost the last love I shall ever win. Now at last I see how my heart was blind to the joy before me that I left behind. Fresh on the hills, and the stars were new in the sky, and the lark was heard in the still. Where was I? Where was I when the spring is cold? Where do robins go? What makes winters lonely? Now at last I know. When the wind was fresh on the hills, and the stars were new in the sky, and the lark was heard in the still. Where was I? Where was I when the spring is cold? Where do robins go? What makes winters lonely? Now at last I know.
Fionnuala McCusker. Thanks, Fionnuala. Thank you very much, Fionnuala. And you didn't make a Hames of that at all. Neither did you, Eamon. Did you get that? Very good. Wonderful, Fionnuala. Thank you very much. Now, Eamon's getting things set up technically for our next contributor, our guest reader. Nets of Wonder includes a piece which Olive wrote called For Fear of Little Men, based on William Allingham's poem, The Fairies. And to mark this festival and the fact that we are in Ballyshannon, Allingham's birthplace. So, we now invite, as you can see, Miss Niamh McGrath to the stage to read from William Allingham's timeless poem, and once again, This will be followed by another of Eamon's original compositions. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Niamh McGrath.
Up the airy mountain, down the rushy glen, we daren't go hunting for fear of little men. Wee folk, good folk, trooping all together, green jacket, red cap, and white Isles feather. Down along the rocky shore, some make their homes. They live on crispy pancakes of yellow tide foam. Some in the reeds of the black mountain lake, with frogs for their watchdogs, all night awake. High on the hilltop the old king sits. He's now so old and grey, he's nigh lost his wits. With a bridge of white mist, Columkill he crosses, on his stately journeys from Slieve to Rosses, or going up with the music on cold starry nights, to sup with the queen of the gay northern lights. They stole little Bridget for 7 years long. When she came down again, her friends were all gone. They took her lightly back between the night and morrow. They thought that she was fast asleep, but she was dead with sorrow. They've kept her ever since, deep within the lake, on a bed of flag leaves, watching till she wake. By the craggy hillside, through the mosses bare, they have planted thorn trees for pleasure here and there. Is any man so daring as dig them up in spite? He shall find their sharpest thorns in his bed at night. Up the airy mountain, down the rushy glen, we daren't go a-hunting for fear of little men.
Thank you very much, Neve and Eamon. The graphics being blown up like this on the cyc wall, I'm sure you agree, are fantastic to see, in all the detail is wonderful. Wonderful indeed. Now, moving on swiftly. The Big Tent. This piece will be read by none other than the artist Barry Britton, who put his foot forward and said, "Olive, I want to read." He has illustrated, as you know, all the pieces in the book. Barry's work is synonymous with the 45 years of the Ballyshannon Folk Festival. And once Barry has read, this will be followed by a song from our very special guest for the launch, who is no stranger to the stage and certainly no stranger to Ballyshannon, Colm Sands. You will see the Sands family listed in the 1986 festival poster, which also features none other than the long-term chair of the folk festival, Olive's other half, Anthony. Indeed, for the first 20 years of the festival, the Sands family were core to its success. Colm has many strings to his bow, including his own beautiful book, These Quiet Places, which was published earlier this year, and copies of which are on sale in the foyer this evening. So without further ado, over to you, Barry and Colm. The Big Tent. Come on up here, Barry.
Hello there. Anthony did look like that one time, you know. The Big Tent. I want to take you back to the 1980s, when the intoxicating smell of canvas and trampled grass marked the stepping out of clock time. On the August bank holiday weekend, the huge canvas marquee known as the Tent, home of the Ballyshannon Folk Festival, arrived. Without internet, mobile phones, and often not even a landline, the organisation of the festival is a huge task. My other half, Anthony, is right in the heart of that work. Our postman is weighed down with bags of demoed cassette tapes, and the clunk and click of the cassette player is a constant in our house. This year, 1980, sees the first of Barry Britton's now iconic posters, the unveiling of which makes the much anticipated final lineup a reality. Soldiers from Finner Camp work shoulder to shoulder with local volunteers to set the tent up, and it rises like a giant mushroom in the centre of the town. There is the heaving and holding taut of the heavy guy ropes to raise giant supporting poles, and the hoisting upright of the flapping canvas top and side walls. Strong stakes are driven home into the ground to secure the structure, and then the bass drum hammering of the maple sprung floor section tattoos our anticipation aloud. Spores of tents spread out from the giant mushroom, and a tented village springs up on the local GAA grounds before overflowing onto every available green space in the town, including our garden. Our house becomes a microcosm of cross-fertilisation of music and friendship, happening all over the town, with the annual reunion of many musicians and performers, while down the town crowds flow like multicoloured rivers through the narrow, hilly streets. They gather together in small knots or larger clusters around the street music sessions, the street performers, the sizzling burger vans, the face painting, and the stalls selling tie-dye batiks and all manner of gewgaws. Above it all rises the chanting, drum beating, and cymbal clashing of the orange-clad Hare Krishnas with their hypnotic chant, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. The afternoon ceilidh in the tent sees big, burly Germans making up with enthusiasm for what they lack in skill as they swing local dancers like dandelions down into the air. And Pat McGee, the Farranchee calls the Waves of Tory. Evening sees the earnest, music-loving Continentals arrive early in the marquee to claim floor space in front of the stage for the concerts, which last anything from 5 to 7 hours, depending on the mood of the performers. As the night progresses, the local stewards have to engage in skilled diplomacy to equal that of Buttress Galley, to avoid international incidents as the well-lubricated Out for the Crack Brigade surge towards the stage for the main acts. On balmy nights, the sides of the marquee are rolled up, releasing waves of heat, sweat and cigarette smoke, and loops of music coil and uncoil up the sides of the natural amphitheatre of the town's hills. And when sheets of torrential rain belt the canvas, it becomes a musical arc. All the greats of the Irish folk and traditional music scene graced that stage. Christy Moore spraying sweat, holding the audience in the palm of his hand with his Ballyshannon version of Lisdoon Varna. The Sands family uniting the audience in a rousing anthem of Nicaragua, We Hear You. Kieran Goss and the Woman's Heart phenomenon bringing the biggest crowd ever, and the sprung wooden floors vibrating as the music of Danann, Alton, Dervish, and a host of other wonderful performers thump into the body with an almost physical intensity. Then on Monday, it is all over. The hallucinatory spell is broken. The buses are packed and every road out of the town lined with hitchhiking, wearing, sweaty bodies. Those 1980s festivals are now dreamlike, topsy-turvy memories of that special kind of magic that comes with the walking home at dawn after all-night music sessions before crawling into the delicious comfort of my bed with the sun spangling the edges of the curtains. Over the 46 years of its existence, the festival has morphed to cater for those of us who could sit for hours on a wooden floor, but who now know what Leonard Cohen meant when he sang about aching in the places where he used to play. We may now sit on soft seats instead of wooden floor, but that timeless alchemy of live music, weaving lives together, endures.
And always great to come and play in the big tent here in Ballyshannon. Always great to come from the north during the troubled times and feel that weight lifting off your shoulders just on this side of Ballyk. The music and the encouragement from musicians here was always wonderful, and I just want to briefly mention the man who inspired this song. He was called Vedran Smilovic. He played in the symphony orchestra of Sarajevo until the concert hall there was destroyed by a shell in the early 1990s. And some days after that, 22 people were killed while they were queuing outside a bakery for bread. This man felt he had to do something about it. Vedran Smilovic put on the suit he had worn in the orchestra. He took his cello and he went to the place where the people had died. He played there for 22 days, one day for each person who had died there. And as he played, slowly but surely, hope and people returned onto the streets. And I think around about 1993, Vedran Smilovic came with us to Ballyshannon and played in the big tent. So for all the people who carry the music and hope across the years, this is Buskers. I saw them on the streets of Clones at a flagpole long ago. A white-haired man with a fiddle. His brother had an old banjo. They're blind, said the woman beside us, but by God, them boys can play. That's a swallow's tail, said my father, and the music took us all away. And if you stop to listen, they're playing for you and I, and their music sings along the strings, between the earth and the sky, between the earth and the sky. Singer, you never heard a voice so strong. When she sang in Newry Market, the whole town heard her song, and her voice was known from London to the streets of Baltimore, for she sang her songs along a road that was often walked before. And if you stop to listen, she's playing for you and I, and her music sings along the strings, between the earth and the sky, between the earth and the sky. Beside Cologne Cathedral, a crowd had gathered around. There was singing, there was laughing, and we hurried towards the sound. You said, that's Klaus the fiddler, he plays here every day. Left the orchestra behind him so that everyone could hear him play. And if you stop to listen, he's playing for you and I, and his music sings along the strings, between the earth and the sky, between the earth and the sky. On the streets of Sarajevo, where death walks every day, Smilovich takes his cello and he slowly starts to play. And the people gather round him in the spread of the marketplace. His music brings both tears and smiles, but it changes every face. And if you stop to listen, he's playing for you and I, and his music sings along the strings, between the earth and the sky, between the earth and the sky. And the music echoes all around, no matter where I stray, like the panpipes from the Andes on Grafton Street today. And some will give them money, and some will ask them why, as the music fills the lonesome place between the street and the sky. And if you stop to listen, they're playing for you and I, and their music sings along the strings, between the earth and the sky, between the earth and the sky.
Thank you, Barry Britton, and our special guest, Mr. Colin Sands. Thank you, Colin. Thank you very much for being here tonight. It means a lot to us. And now, moving on, we'll have a couple of pieces now from the writer of these wonderful creations. In recognition of the month we are now in, Olive will read for November, Remembering the Dead, followed by a beautiful piece of music from Eamon. And maybe just listen out for the blackbird. Ladies and gentlemen, Olive reading Remembering the Dead.
Thanks, Richard. They say the dead are always with us, but that's not really true. After the first fierce waves of grief subside, Our task of living sinks them further and further through the layers of clay. They come back when we least expect them, brilliantly and fleetingly, when the texture of material or the side view of a face resurrects them. Then we feel again grief as in the first hour. Our more recently dead are closer to the surface of our lives. We can still hear their voices, see them fully as they were in life. But soon they too slip through the layers of our memory. I find myself at the old stone church of Tara on the banks of the Erne for the ceremony to mark All Souls' Day. Spruced up with flowers for the occasion, the graves encircle the church like a wreath, with a containing boundary hedge of red-hipped hawthorn separating them from the fields of the small farms all around. I join the big crowd outside the church, made up of generations of relatives of the people buried there. I get a good place with my back against the sun-warmed stone of the porch, with a view down the path and over the surrounding countryside. As the choir opens up with a thin, reedy version of Sweetheart of Jesus, I am once again an awed child inside the church, straining to see where the unearthly music is coming from. In front of me today, a chair has been provided for a very old, leathery skinned woman wearing a woolly, multicoloured ski hat. She joins in the singing with gusto. The elderly canon, who's been here so long, he's both baptised and buried many of those being remembered today, calls out the rosary through an old tinny megaphone. The 5 sorrowful mysteries echo eerily back from the surrounding townlands, Corranbag, Corroquille, Drumbad and Ruscor, names repeated over and over on the tombstones around me. As I count the Hail Marys on my fingers, a young woman balancing a baby on her hip and clutching a bunch of cellophane-wrapped flowers runs along the main road and melts into the crowd. During the Hail Holy Queen, as we poor banished children of Eve, mourning and weeping in this valley of tears, appeal to Mary, a farmer, cloth cap in hand, dodges his way into the crowd. The rosary ends, and the hypnotic rise and fall of the pray for us, of the litany meshes with the revving of the Donegal to Dublin express bus as it tries to negotiate its way to the cars parked askew, blocking its way. The canon and the altar servers move slowly among the graves, sprinkling holy water on them and creating a Mexican wave of cross signing. A young girl in front of me, who has been unwavering in her attention, senses the end and hitches up her white denim fake fur jacket to adjust the sparkling silver belt on her flared denim jeans. The choir finish with Nearer My God to Thee, but for that hour it is the dead who have been nearer to us. They have had their moment. It is time now for them to return back down through the topsoil, through the marly, stony or silty clay, right down to the bedrock. The sun is fading. The priest's final blessing is drowned out by the fluting thrill of a blackbird's song. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Olive and Eamon. I think the alarm is going to go off tonight looking for that blackbird flying around in the auditorium. And so, to finish this evening on with our final piece, we have a favourite with many Sunday Miscellany listeners. Olive is going to read Auntie Greta, which is going to be followed by the uplifting and fairly jaunty music, I would say, Eamon, when I was listening to it today anyway, which Eamon composed and recorded to complement this written piece. So, again, I welcome Olive to the microphone and Eamon to the piano to give us Auntie Greta.
My Auntie Greta loved rainy days. In the nursing home, where old age and arthritis had tethered her to a high-backed chair, she told us her love of rain stemmed from the early part of her life in a big, busy Fermanagh farmhouse on the shores of Lough Erne. There, she said, she loved to wake up to the sound of rain thudding against the slate roof above her head, because a wet day meant an easy, or at least an easier day, with less outdoor work. All through my childhood, I'd heard Greta described as being so strong she could do the work of any man. Heaving milk churns, carting buckets of feed to calves, herding cattle. You might say that Greta was lucky for having been born into a big, prosperous farm with a large two-storey house at a time when farms were small and houses were thatched. But she was unlucky in being seen as a big-boned girl with no rush of suitors to give her a home and a life of her own. Greta's destiny, it appeared, was to be that of an unpaid farmhand who would look after her parents in their old age. Her hopes had been raised when Paddy Joe from Cashellard began a weekly courtship, cycling the 6 miles to her home with a bag of emerald toffees for her. Paddy Joe had already set tongues wagging by building a tiny one-room slate house for himself, so small that, in his own words, if anyone comes in the front door, they'll have to back out as there's not enough room to turn around. The assumption was he'd extend the house when he got married. But a mountain of toffees was consumed. But the one-room slate house grew no bigger. This sliver of a dream must have faded for Greta when she reached her 40s, and an age when, as the local wits put it, there was no risk of a pram in the hallway. Greta appeared to have no option but acceptance of her place. But what happened next took on the status of a fairy tale for me as a child. A real-life prince and the unlikely guise of Tony, a retired guard from Buncrana, came to the rescue of my much-loved Auntie Greta. She was crossing the border to Ballyshannon on her bicycle one wet day when she got a puncture. That left her stranded in that no-man's land between the northern and southern customs huts, and she was equidistant from her home and her destination. A devoutly religious man, Tony was on his way home from his annual 3-day pilgrimage to Lough Derg, when, stopping at the customs hut, he spotted the dilemma of the soaked and forlorn Greta. He went to help, put her bicycle in the boot of the car, and gave her a lift to Ballyshannon. Greta never told us exactly what was said on that journey, but evidently, by the time they reached Ballyshannon, What should have been an ending had become instead a beginning. A barely unimaginable future unfolded for both of them. As unlikely a couple as they may have seemed to others, they must have seen in each other the potential to meet their deepest longing. I still remember the flurry of disbelief mixed with some envy in the family when a short time, without even a by your leave, Greta was married and queen of her own castle, a neat townhouse on the main street of Buncrana, as far removed from her isolated rural life as could be imagined. She blossomed in this new life, delighting in having neighbours, shops, a chapel she could walk to, and most magical of all, a beach on her doorstep. I know all this from when I stayed with her on summer holidays. Sitting together on a bench by the sea, eating 99s, I felt I would burst with happiness. Her home, for me, coming from a large rambunctious family of 7, was truly a palace, spotless with the jewel colours of statues and holy pictures in every room. Tony was a kind presence who would gently chide Greta when she wondered if she should let me watch Top of the Pops on the black and white TV. Let the child enjoy herself, he'd say. And Greta shared 20 happy years with Tony. She lived on in Buncrana after his death, and in her old age she moved back to the nursing home in Balik. She rests now in Buncrana beside her gentle prince. Here, whenever I walk past the ruins of Paddy Joe's tiny house, where he lived out the rest of his life eating toffees alone, I think of Greta and Tony's tranquil happiness in that townhouse, where the sound of fat raindrops clattering on a roof were no longer needed as a refuge from life. Thank you.
the boy can play. He sure can. Thank you, Olive and Eamon. Tomorrow, folks, Olive travels to Dublin for the launch of a new Sunday Miscellany collection in which she is honoured to have been chosen as one of the contributors. The book has been nominated for an An Post Award for the Best Irish Published Book category, so Olive has asked me to please tell you all to remember to go online and cast your vote for that book. So there's a lot in this book for you. You've really just had a taster of it this evening. And we've come to almost the end, but I would like to ask our special guest, Colm Sands, to come back on stage, Colm, to lead us all in a final song. And you never know, you might sing along with him as well. But could I also please ask our contributors this evening, Joan, Niamh, Barry, come on up here. Fanula as well. Please, if you're still in the audience. Are you still
I'm here.
Come on up here now. It's time to take your bow. Our three collaborators, of course, Olive, Barry, and Eamon, will come up onto the stage and let the people of Ballyshannon, the environs, see you in all your glory. And thank you for everything you've contributed to this evening. So, very shortly, Colm will lead us on the final song of the evening. Just stay on the stage together. You don't have to say no.
You're allowed to sing. You're all allowed to sing. It'll be great to hear you. What a wonderful night it has been. The written word, beautiful music, the art, all pulled together. This song kind of touches on that idea of music and stories. And there's a chorus. It'd be great to hear you singing it. You'll probably guess some of the rhymes. Rest for a while now the night is young. The time is short and the road is. Tell me a story, I'll sing you a. For tomorrow the road will be calling us on. Okay, it'd be great to hear you sing it. And you can make up the words if you want. Rest for a while now, the night is young. The time is short and the road is long. Tell me a story, I'll sing you a song. For tomorrow the road will be calling us on. Don't let your journey be stopped at the start. There are times when your feet have to follow your heart. But the faster you travel, the less you can see. And the more that you have, the less you can be. Rest for a while. Rest for a while now, the night is young. Time is short. Time is short and the road is long. Tell me a story, I'll sing you a song. For tomorrow the road will be calling us on. Look for the house with a smile at the door, where we sat round the table and danced on the floor. Found warmth at the fire, came back for more. There was grass on the chimney and a lock on the door. Rest for a while. Rest for a while now, the night is young. Time is short. Time is short and the road is long. Tell me a story. Tell me a story. I'll sing you a song. For tomorrow the road will be calling us on.
You orchestrated it.